Chosen one. Stop and listen carefully. The last day of September is unlike any other day. It is not just the final page of a calendar slipping away. It is a threshold, a dividing line, where heaven watches to see if you will walk in silence. You have felt this before, haven't you? In the storms of life. There have been moments when you sensed the pull not to respond, not to argue, not to explain. That was not weakness, that was divine calling. Your silence is a roar in the spirit realm. Imagine a chosen one, living in a small mountain village. For a year he endured slander, false accusations, suspicious glances. On the final evening of September, the people gathered, waiting for him to explode, to defend himself, to give them the evidence they longed for. But he only looked up at the deep purple sky, remained silent. And in that moment, God's presence covered him. The next morning, the very job he thought would never be his was opened because he chose silence at the exact moment heaven required it. Silence is not emptiness. It is like a seed buried in the ground. No one sees it. No one hears it. Yet roots are forming. Life is stirring. And in its time it will burst forth. When you are silent, you are not powerless. You are storing power. Like a bow pulled back tight, waiting to release the arrow. In the scroll of Exodus, chapter 14, verse 13, do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance of the Lord today. This is the command for the last day of September. Stand firm, be silent, do not fear, and let the Lord fight for you. Picture a still lake at midnight. When the water is calm, the heavens and the moon are reflected perfectly, but the moment a breeze ripples across it, the reflection shatters. So it is with your soul. Only in silence can heaven's reflection be seen clearly in you. The last day of September will test you. Someone may trigger old wounds. Circumstances may push you to defend yourself. But silence is the proof that you trust God to fight for you. When you do not need to prove yourself, that is when heaven proves you belong to Him. Now I call you to act. If these words strike your spirit, mark it. Like this message, so heaven sees your agreement. Share it so another chosen one will not miss this warning. And in the comments, write the number 999, the prophetic sign of holy silence and crossing into a new season. Finally, subscribe so you do not lose the flow of messages heaven is releasing for you in this crucial hour. The last day of September is near. Heaven is watching. Will you remain silent and stand firm? Understand this. Silence is not passive. It is a weapon forged in the unseen. Every word you do not speak becomes a shield that guards your destiny. Every argument you refuse to enter becomes a doorway God Himself walks through. The enemy counts on your reaction, but heaven crowns your restraint. Chosen one, prepare yourself. The silence of that day is not the end, it is the beginning. It is the closing of one chapter and the unlocking of another. When October dawns, you will carry authority that silence has carved within you. Hold steady, remain still, and watch heaven move in your favor. Chosen one, let us go deeper into the mystery of silence. You may wonder why God chooses silence as the command for the last day of September. Why not loud prayers? Why not declarations? Why not shouts of victory? Because silence carries a hidden power that few understand. Noise is easy. Words are easy. Anyone can raise their voice. But silence requiert discipline, trust, and surrender. Silence says, I believe God hears me even when I do not speak. Silence says, I will not reveal my plans to the enemy. Silence says, I choose faith over fear. Think of silence as a sealed treasure chest. Inside rests gold, jewels, priceless documents. But the lock keeps it secure. So too with your silence. It secures what heaven has placed within you. Without it, your treasures would spill out before they were ready. The enemy thrives in noise. His strategy has always been to stir up chaos, to provoke reactions, to tempt chosen ones, to reveal too much, too soon. But when you are silent, you close every entry point. You do not hand him ammunition. You force him into confusion, because he cannot fight what he cannot predict. There was once a man called to leadership, misunderstood by his community. He longed to speak, to explain, to clear his name. But each time he prepared to, the Spirit pressed him into silence. At first, he thought he was losing ground. Yet years later, those same people looked back and saw his silence not as weakness, but as wisdom. His silence spoke louder than his words ever could. This is why silence holds divine power. It creates space for heaven's voice to be the loudest. In the stillness, the Spirit whispers strategies, directions, warnings, and promises. You may not hear them in the noise of argument or defense, but in the hush of silence, revelation flows. Consider also how silence protects your own heart. Words spoken in anger can wound beyond repair. Words spoken in haste can destroy relationships. Words spoken carelessly can close doors that heaven intended to open. But silence shields you from these traps. Silence builds walls around your spirit until the storm passes. The Word of God gives us a clue to this hidden strength. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 17, verse 28, even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. Do you see it? Even the world recognizes the power of silence. If silence can elevate a fool, how much more can it strengthen a chosen one, crowned and called for divine purpose? Imagine a candle in a dark room. If the air is still, the flame burns steady and bright. But when the room fills with noise, with constant movement, the flame flickers, sometimes even dies out. Your silence is the stillness that protects your flame. Without it, the light may falter. So when the last day of September comes, understand that your silence is not absence. It is alignment. It is not weakness. It is wisdom. You are not retreating. You are fortifying. And the heavens will honor you for it. Remember this. Silence is not empty space, but sacred ground. It is the place where your strength renews, your vision clears, and your future steadies. Do not despise it. Embrace it. For in that quiet, God Himself prepares the stage for your next unveiling. Chosen one. Silence is more than the absence of words. It is the tuning of your ears to hear the whispers of the Spirit. On the last day of September, while the world rushes with noise, your silence becomes an invitation for heaven to draw near. Have you ever noticed how the softest sounds are only heard when the room grows quiet? A clock ticking, a leaf brushing against the window, the breath of someone beside you. In the same way, the voice of God is often too subtle to be caught in chaos. It is in your stillness that the whispers become clear. There was once a young woman who spent her nights pleading for guidance. She prayed loudly. She shouted her desperation, but nothing seemed to change. Then, one night, she sat in silence, her tears falling, but her lips unmoving. And in that silence, a gentle thought rose in her heart, not her own voice, but a divine instruction. That one whisper shifted her entire life. What years of shouting could not accomplish, one moment of silence unveiled. Your silence is not wasted time. It is the soil where divine direction is planted. The Spirit does not always come in fire, earthquake, or wind. Often, He comes as a still, small voice, a whisper so light it can only be caught by the soul that has chosen quiet over noise. In the writings of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 15, it is declared, "In quietness and trust is your strength." And let this sink in. Strength is not always displayed in shouting, in fighting, or in defending yourself. Strength is found in quiet trust, in the courage to let God speak while you listen. The chosen ones who hear the whispers of heaven will always stand stronger than the crowds who shout without direction. Picture a sailboat without wind. Its sails hang heavy, but when the breeze begins, the sails must be still, spread wide, waiting. Only then does the unseen wind carry it forward. That is what silence does for you. It positions your spirit to catch the wind of heaven. Now, I want you to mark this moment with a small but powerful act. In the comments, write, "Quietness is power." These 3 words are not decoration, they are a declaration. They remind you, and they announce to heaven and earth, that you see silence, not as emptiness, but as strength. When you write it, let your spirit whisper, "My quietness is not weakness, it is alignment. It is my shield and my power." Chosen one. Silence is not emptiness. It is the chamber where heaven whispers, and those who hear will never walk blind. Think of silence as a sanctuary. It is the place where your restless thoughts are hushed, where your anxieties lose their grip, and where God's direction can finally settle into your spirit. Without silence, His whispers are drowned by the roar of life. With silence, His words come alive like fresh water poured into thirsty soil. This is why quietness is power. Power is not always noise or motion. Sometimes it is the quiet strength of someone who refuses to be shaken. Your silence on that last day of September is more than discipline, it is prophecy. It declares that heaven's whispers are louder than earth's noise. Chosen one. Silence is more than a discipline. It is a vessel, a container designed to hold the secrets of heaven. What God is preparing to release into your life is not meant for the ears of everyone around you. It is too holy, too weighty, too specific for careless conversation. That is why, on the last day of September, you are asked to be still, because silence becomes the chamber where heaven's mysteries are revealed. Think of a sealed letter, written with the King's hand. If it is opened too soon, or spoken aloud without care, its message is lost, its authority questioned. But when kept hidden until the appointed time, the letter carries undeniable power. In the same way, the mysteries God longs to entrust to you cannot be carried in noise. They are preserved in silence until the day they are revealed. There is a reason the prophets often retreated into caves, mountains, or wildernesses. It was not merely to escape the people, it was to create the stillness where divine secrets could flow. Words spoken too quickly, visions shared too soon, can weaken the very blessing they were meant to birth. Silence guards the sacred. I recall the story of a young man who felt the Lord impress a promise upon him. He was eager, and so he told everyone, his family, his friends, his co-workers. At first, they smiled, but soon, doubt and mockery followed. The words of others began to choke his own faith, and he nearly abandoned what God had whispered. It was only when he returned to silence, holding the promise in his heart like a hidden flame, that his strength returned. Years later, when the promise finally manifested, no one could deny that it was God's doing. His silence had protected the seed until the season of harvest. This is why silence matters. It is not about suppressing your voice. It is about protecting God's voice within you. Heaven does not reveal secrets carelessly. They are placed into the hands of the chosen who will guard them. When you are silent, you prove that you can be trusted with revelation that others may not yet understand. The Word of God reminds us through the writings of Amos, chapter 3, verse 7. Surely the sovereign Lord does nothing without revealing his plan to his servants, the prophets. Notice this. God reveals before he acts. But he does not reveal to everyone, only to those who walk closely with him, those who will treasure the revelation. And many times, those prophets kept the vision hidden until God released them to speak. Silence is part of prophetic stewardship. Imagine a cocoon wrapped tightly around a butterfly. To the world, it looks like stillness, even death. But inside, transformation is unfolding. The silence of the cocoon is what protects the process. If broken open too early, the creature inside would never take flight. Your silence, chosen one, is the cocoon of your destiny. What heaven is forming within you needs the cover of silence until the day of release. So when September comes to its close, do not resist the command to hold your tongue. Do not despise the quiet hours. They are not wasted. They are wombs of revelation. In those hours, heaven leans close. In those hours, mysteries unfold. In those hours, you prove to God that you are ready, not just to receive a secret, but to carry it faithfully until its appointed season. Silence, then, is not emptiness, but sacred custody. And the chosen ones who guard heaven's secrets in silence will be trusted with authority that noise could never hold. Chosen one. The last day of September will not only test your strength, it will also expose the schemes of darkness. The enemy thrives in noise. He builds his throne in arguments, in gossip, in curses shouted into the air. Noise is his camouflage. But silence, your silence, is the one thing he cannot withstand. It is like turning off the lights in a room where he lurks. Suddenly, he is revealed, exposed, stripped of power. Think about how shadows behave. In a crowded street at noon, noise and movement cover them. But when stillness falls, when quiet settles, the shadows stretch out in plain sight. The enemy fears your silence because it exposes him. Every time you choose not to engage, every time you choose stillness over reaction, you declare that you see through his illusions. There is a story of a chosen one who lived in a bustling city. She often defended herself when others spoke lies, exhausting her spirit in endless words. But one day, the Spirit whispered, "Stay silent." She obeyed. Strangely, her enemies grew louder. They shouted. They accused. They laughed. Yet within weeks, their plans unraveled, not by her hand, but by the hand of God. Her silence had become a courtroom in heaven, where the truth was revealed. That is the essence of this season. Silence as spiritual warfare. Words can be twisted, but silence cannot be corrupted. Words can be replayed, misused, misunderstood, but silence leaves no evidence for the accuser to use against you. The scriptures remind us in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 4, "The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds." Oh, silence may not look like a weapon to human eyes, but in the spirit, it is sharper than the loudest sword, stronger than the longest speech. While the enemy screams, your silence becomes thunder in heaven's courts. And now, chosen one, let me speak with imagery to your heart. If these words find you, do not hold them tightly to yourself. Imagine carrying a lantern through a dark forest. You see the path, but another behind you still stumbles. If you lift the lantern higher, both of you find your way. That is what happens when you choose to share light. When you like this message, it is not about algorithms or numbers. It is your lantern lifted. When you share it, you hand another soul a torch in their midnight. When you subscribe, you are not following a page. You are stepping into a circle of chosen ones, a gathering of lights refusing to be drowned by darkness. This is not obligation. This is beauty. To engage here is to add your flame to a fire that will not be put out. You do it not because you must, but because deep inside you know silence may protect you, but shared light rescues others. So let your heart decide. If the Spirit whispers, lift your lantern. Let your silence shield you, and let your light guide another. And heaven will remember, for every act of silence, there is also an act of light. The two do not oppose each other. They complete each other. Silence is the shield that guards you. Light is the signal that guides others. Together, they make you unstoppable. When you choose silence before men and light before heaven, you walk as one who cannot be shaken. And when October dawns, the fruit of your choice will show. The path you illuminated for others will become a testimony for yourself, and the silence you carried like armor will become a crown. This is the mystery of the chosen ones, hidden in stillness, revealed in glory. Chosen one. The last day of September is not only a threshold, it is a prophetic day of reckoning. It is the close of one cycle and the weighing of hearts before the next begins. Heaven observes carefully, not to condemn you, but to measure your obedience, your restraint, and your trust in the unseen. Throughout history, God has marked certain days as turning points. For Israel, the crossing of the Red Sea was not just escape, it was the line between slavery and freedom. For Joshua, the walls of Jericho falling were not only a victory, it was the opening of the land of promise. In the same way, the end of September stands as a prophetic marker. What you do or do not do on that day carries weight in the unseen realm. This is why silence is commanded. Reckoning is not about noise, it is about posture. When the courtroom of heaven is in session, silence speaks louder than words. Your stillness becomes testimony. Your restraint becomes evidence of faith. Picture a scale in the hand of God. On one side rests your trials, your doubt, your moments of weakness. On the other side rests your obedience, your trust, your silence. The final day of September tips that scale. It is not about perfection, it is about surrender. Heaven does not demand that you never stumble, but that when the crucial hour comes, you stand still and let God weigh your heart. There was a chosen one, a man weary from years of delay. He had spoken many words in frustration, and often he wondered if God had forgotten him. But when his September reckoning came, he felt the Spirit whisper, "Be still today." Against his instinct, he obeyed. He turned away from arguments, refused the urge to prove himself, and said nothing. Weeks later, a door swung open that he had been knocking on for years. Heaven had weighed his silence as obedience, and the balance tipped in his favor. The writings of the prophet Nahum, chapter 1, verse 7, declare, "The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him." Lo, this truth defines the day of reckoning. Silence is trust, and trust draws the care of God. When you do not rush to defend yourself, when you do not fight with your own strength, you are declaring, "God is my refuge. I trust him." That declaration, though unspoken, is louder than any words. Imagine the courtroom of heaven. Angels stand as witnesses. The accuser waits with his file of complaints. And then you are called forward. But instead of speaking, you stand still. No excuses, no defenses, just silence. And in that silence, the voice of God thunders, "This one is mine. I will fight for them." That is what silence secures for you on the last day of September. Chosen one. I invite you to seal this revelation with a sign in the comments. Write the number 777. This is not superstition, it is alignment. 7 is the number of completion, fullness, and divine perfection. By writing it, you declare that your silence is the closing of an old cycle, the sealing of divine order, and the opening of a perfected season. Let your silence be your obedience, and let your number be your sign. Heaven is watching, and heaven remembers. Chosen one, do you realize that your silence does not stand alone? In the unseen realm, angels are already in position, waiting for the moment when you obey the command to be still. Your silence is not inactivity, it is partnership. Heaven's warriors are released in response to your restraint. From the beginning, angels have been described as messengers, protectors, and warriors. They do not act on human impulse, they act on divine instruction. When you remain silent on the last day of September, you are aligning yourself with heaven's order. And in that alignment, angels find their permission to move. Your stillness is their signal. Think of Daniel in the lion's den. He did not argue with the king, nor cry out against the injustice. He remained quiet, his faith unshaken. In that silence, angels moved. A single angel shut the mouths of lions that night. Because one man chose trust over noise, silence became the open door for heaven's intervention. This same pattern repeats across the scriptures. In Joshua's time, when the people circled Jericho, they marched in silence for 6 days. No shouting, no boasting, no explanation. Only on the 7th day did the shout come, but by then, the angels had already weakened the walls. The silence was not wasted. It was warfare in disguise. Your silence. 2. Summons angelic strength. While the enemy tries to provoke you into speech, heaven is positioning an unseen army. When you say nothing, the angels say everything on your behalf. They speak in realms you cannot enter. They defend you in places you cannot stand. They dismantle traps you cannot see. Imagine a battlefield shrouded in fog. 2 armies prepare to clash, but one side remains completely still. No war cries, no drums, no noisy. The other side grows restless, confused, uncertain. In the moment of silence, a hidden legion rises from behind, securing the victory. This is the strategy of heaven: silence as the cover, angels as the strike force. There was once a woman who was treated unjustly in her workplace. Every word spoken against her was untrue, yet her attempts to defend herself only seemed to worsen the situation. Finally, she heard the Spirit whisper, "Be still." Though her silence was misunderstood, she obeyed. Weeks later, the manager who had plotted against her was unexpectedly removed. The position he once held was offered to her, what no argument could achieve. Heaven's intervention accomplished. Her silence allowed angels to work unhindered. The scriptures remind us in the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 1, verse 14, "Are not all angels ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation? This is your assurance. You are never alone in your silence. The unseen company of heaven surrounds you. Every step you take in quiet obedience is reinforced by angelic strength. Consider silence as a banner lifted without words. The angels see it and respond. They take your silence as agreement with heaven's plan. And once you have aligned, their mission becomes unstoppable. So when the final day of September arrives, and your tongue longs to speak, remember the unseen. Remember that angels stand ready, awaiting the signal of your stillness. By holding your peace, you give them freedom to move. Silence is not surrender, it is strategy. It is you stepping aside so heaven's army can step in. And when they do, the victory that unfolds will leave. No doubt it was never your strength, but heaven's hand that won the day. Chosen one. Silence does more than summon angelic strength. It shields you. On the final day of September, the words you do not speak will protect you more than you realize. For words are like doors. Some open the way to blessing, while others spoken in haste swing wide to curses, accusations, and snares. By remaining silent, you keep every wrong door firmly shut. The enemy is called the accuser for a reason. He waits for words to use against you, twisting them, echoing them, turning them into weapons. When you fall silent, you deny him his evidence. Imagine a prosecutor walking into a courtroom with no documents, no witnesses, nothing to present. That is what your silence does. It strips the enemy of material for his case. Consider the story of Jesus before his crucifixion. When accused by priests and rulers, he did not argue. He stood silent before them. And the scriptures say the rulers marveled. His silence did not mean defeat, it was mastery. He refused to give them words they could distort, even in stillness. He held authority. That same authority echoes in your silence. Think of silence as armor. A soldier may wear shining breastplates and carry weapons, but armor's greatest strength is that it shields without noise. You do not see armor boasting, it simply protects. Your silence is armor for your spirit. It absorbs the arrows of slander, the daggers of gossip, the darts of false accusation. Words may be flung, but in silence they cannot pierce you. There was a chosen one who found herself in a circle of betrayal. Friends whispered against her. Colleagues twisted her intentions. Even family questioned her. She longed to explain, to clear her name, but she chose silence. At first, she felt naked and vulnerable. Yet in time, she discovered that silence was a cloak. The very things spoken against her collapsed under their own weight. And when the truth surfaced, her integrity shone brighter than any defense she could have offered. Silence had shielded her until vindication arrived. The Book of Psalms, chapter 31, verse 20, declares, "In the shelter of your presence you hide them from all human intrigues. You keep them safe in your dwelling from accusing tongues." Oh, this verse unveils the mystery of silence. To hold your tongue is to step into the shelter of God's presence. You are hidden, shielded, untouchable. Accusations may fly, but they strike only air. For your silence has placed you in a refuge no one can penetrate. Imagine silence as a wall of glass. The enemy sees you, but cannot reach you. He shouts, but his voice bounces back. Hergestuurus, but his hands never touch. You, inside the shield, remain untouched, watching as his fury exhausts itself. That is the power of silence. It does not stop the enemy from trying, but it prevents his attempts from succeeding. Chosen one, understand this. The last day of September will be a day when words are sharpened against you, when accusations may rise, when tempers may flare, but your silence is your shield. You will not fight with words. You will stand protected by the shelter of the Almighty. So hold your peace. Do not let your lips betray your destiny, for in silence, you are hidden in God's presence, and no accusing tongue can harm you. Chosen one. There is another layer to silence, sacred restraint. It is not simply the absence of speech, it is the deliberate decision to withhold what the enemy craves. He longs for you to reveal frustration, to confess doubt, to give away heaven's secrets through careless words. But when you remain silent, you deny him access. Your silence becomes the locked gate he cannot pass. Consider the life of Joseph. He carried dreams from God, visions of greatness, yet when he spoke them too freely, his brothers rose against him. Words given too soon became the doorway for betrayal. But later, when he learned restraint, he carried secrets in silence until God's timing unfolded. Sacred restraint turned him from dreamer to ruler. The same is true for you. Silence guards the treasure of your destiny. Every complaint withheld, every argument resisted, every explanation unsaid is a victory in the spirit. This is not weakness, it is wisdom. The Apostle James wrote in his letter, chapter 1, verse 19, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Do you see it? Restraint is not punishment, it is maturity. It is the mark of those who walk closely with God. Your silence does not mean you have nothing to say. It means what you carry is too precious to waste. Picture a fortress holding priceless jewels. The walls are thick, the gates are locked, and not every passerby is invited inside. That is what your silence creates, a fortress around your soul. Not everyone deserves access to what God has placed within you. Your restraint keeps the treasure safe. There was a chosen one who faced ridicule daily at work. She could have lashed out, but she remembered the Spirit's whisper, "Hold your peace." So she endured in silence. Later, the very people who mocked her came to her for counsel when life shook their foundations. Her silence preserved her credibility, and in due time, her restraint spoke louder than any defense. Sacred restraint is a choice, and it will be tested. On the final day of September, words may press against your lips, but silence is your answer. For restraint does not only protect you, it positions you. It shows heaven. You can be trusted with revelation, authority, and influence. Now, let us mark this together. In the comments, write, "I choose silence." These 3 words are not weakness, they are your strength. By writing them, you declare to heaven and to your own heart, "My silence is sacred. My restraint is holy. My words belong to God, not to the enemy." And do not underestimate this act. It is not just text, it is agreement. It is you stepping into the circle of those who understand that silence is not loss, but gain. It is you aligning yourself with the chosen who guard their destiny with sacred restraint. So let the world speak. You will remain silent, and in that silence, heaven will fight, protect, and vindicate you. Why? Because silence is not an empty reaction, it is a spiritual decision. It says you no longer allow your enemies to set the rhythm of your responses. It says your heart beats to heaven's timing, not to earthly provocation. By choosing silence, you declare that God Himself is the keeper of your reputation, the defender of your destiny, and the judge of your case. This is why your silence will not end in shame, it will end in glory. Because heaven always honors restraint. Chosen one. Silence is not weakness. It is fire under control. It is strength hidden beneath discipline. On the last day of September, your silence will not be wasted. It will shape you, like gold tested in the furnace. Your restraint is the heat that refines your character. There is a kind of silence that feels heavy, like swallowing words you desperately want to release. Yet even in that pressure, heaven is at work. The fire does not destroy the gold, it purifies it. Your silence is the furnace where impurities burn away, where trust is proven, where endurance is forged. The Apostle Paul wrote in his letter to the Romans, chapter 5, verse 3 and 4, "We also glory in our sufferings, because suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope, silence, then is not punishment. It is perseverance in disguise. Every word you hold back becomes strength added to your soul. Every argument resisted becomes character sealed within you. And out of this refining, hope rises like flame, steady and unshakable. Think of silence as a bow being drawn. The longer the tension is held, the further the arrow will fly. To others, it may look like you are inactive, but in truth, you are gathering force, Your silence is preparing a release that will reach further than any careless word ever could. Or picture silence as clay on the potter's wheel. The clay does not resist, does not complain, does not shout. It yields, and in the yielding, it is shaped into something strong and beautiful. Your silence is your yielding to the potter's hands, trusting that the final form will be worth the waiting. There was once a chosen one whose life seemed locked in delay. They waited for recognition, for opportunity, for breakthrough. Many urged them to speak louder, to push harder, but they chose silence instead. They bore the weight of waiting, and in time, the waiting shaped them into someone not only ready for blessing but ready to carry it without breaking. Their silence became their strength. Their waiting became their witness. This is what the last day of September will test in you. Will you allow the furnace to refine you? Will you let the potter shape you in quietness? Will you trust that the tension of the bow is preparing your arrow for release? If you can, you will discover that silence is not weakness, it is preparation. Chosen one. I will not demand from you. I will not command you, but I invite you, gently, to lift your light in this moment. If you feel these words shaping you, then let it show. When you like this message, imagine it as gold glowing brighter in the furnace. When you share it, see it as the arrow released, carrying further than you could ever go alone. And when you subscribe, think of it as clay returning again and again to the potter's wheel, yielding to be shaped into glory. Do this only if your heart stirs. This is not obligation, it is beauty. It is the voluntary offering of one who understands that silence refines, but light shared multiplies. So stand in the furnace, rest on the wheel, hold steady in the drawn bow, and when the moment comes, your silence will break forth into strength, and your witness will shine brighter than fire itself. Remember, silence is not the end. It is the preparation before the unveiling. The furnace does not last forever. Gold emerges. The bow does not stay drawn. The arrow is released. The clay is not left unfinished. The vessel takes form. Your silence is temporary, but the strength it forges will endure. Let the end of September be your moment of shaping, so that October can be your season of release. Chosen one. Silence is not simply personal discipline, it is a testimony recorded in the courts of heaven. Every moment you choose restraint on the last day of September, heaven takes note. Your silence is not ignored, it is written, like ink flowing onto the scroll of eternity. Your obedience is recorded as evidence of your faith. When we think of judgment, we often imagine thunder, fire, and visible acts. But judgment often begins in the smallest, most hidden choices. Silence is one of those choices. It may feel like nothing to the world, but to heaven, it is a powerful declaration. I trust God more than my own words. And consider how Job faced accusations. His friends pressed him, demanded explanations, twisted his pain into blame. Though he spoke at times, many of his most powerful moments came in silence, when he placed his hand over his mouth and allowed God's voice to rise above his own. In those moments, heaven saw not defeat, but reverence. Silence became a testimony greater than argument. The prophet Hosea, chapter 2, verse 23, contains this word of promise. I will say to those called not my people, you are my people. And they will say, You are my God. 100. This verse reveals the mystery of being chosen. Heaven does not recognize you by your noise, but by your alignment. When you are silent in obedience, you are marked as His people. It is as if heaven writes beside your name, "This one belongs to me." And imagine a great courtroom. The judge sits high. Witnesses stand ready, and every action is noted by scribes. You stand there, accused but calm. You say nothing. The silence feels heavy, but then the judge himself speaks in your defense. His words are final, his decree undeniable. That is what your silence secures, the judge speaking on your behalf. There was a chosen one who endured betrayal within her family. Lies circled, accusations multiplied. At every turn, she had a chance to lash back, yet she chose silence. Years later, when truth surfaced, those same family members remembered her restraint. They confessed that her silence had carried more power than their words. Heaven had used her obedience as testimony, and in time, it shone as undeniable vindication. Silence is not absence, it is evidence. Every word withheld, every argument resisted, every sigh surrendered becomes part of heaven's record. This is why the silence of the last day of September carries such weight. It is not only about guarding yourself, it is about testifying before heaven that you belong to God. Picture silence as a signature on a covenant. You do not need to speak paragraphs to prove agreement. A single, steady mark secures the contract. Your silence is that signature. Heaven sees it. Heaven records it. Heaven honors it. And when October arrives, your silence will not vanish. It will remain in the records of heaven, a testimony etched in eternity. Others may forget, but heaven will not. The angels who witnessed it will not. The judge who weighed it will not. So, do not despise the quiet hour. See it for what it is, a moment that echoes in eternity. On the last day of September, your silence becomes more than obedience. It becomes evidence that heaven itself will never erase. Chosen one. Silence is not just protection or testimony, it is a prophetic act. What you do in stillness at the close of September does not end with that day, it seals the future. Your silence becomes a line drawn in the spirit, marking the transition into a new season. Prophetic acts may seem simple. Moses lifting his staff, Joshua walking around Jericho, Elijah pouring water on the altar before fire fell. Each action looked small, almost strange, yet heaven counted them as faith. In the same way, your silence is a prophetic sign. It says to heaven and to earth, I am ready for the shift. I will not drag old noise into my new season. Lot, there was a chosen one who endured years of waiting for breakthrough. Every September, she would enter October, weary, carrying the noise of disappointment with her. But one year, she chose silence on the final day. She ended the cycle with stillness, leaving behind the clamor of the past. That October, doors opened she had never imagined. Her silence was not the end of waiting, it was the marking of change. In the writings of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 7, it is written, "There is a time to be silent and a time to speak." No, the last day of September is that time to be silent. It is a prophetic closing of one chapter and the sealing of another. Your silence becomes the lock that shuts the old door, ensuring what was behind you does not follow into what lies ahead. Picture a traveler stepping onto a bridge. Behind them is noise, shouts, and confusion. Ahead lies open space, still water, and promise. If they turn back to shout, they lose time. But if they keep walking in silence, they cross into the new. That is what your silence does. It carries you across the bridge into October. Chosen one, I invite you to act as a sign of this prophetic crossing in the comments. Write the number 333. This number is not random, it is a prophetic mark of divine confirmation, a symbol of God's completeness expressed in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. By writing it, you are saying, I choose silence, I choose alignment, I choose the covering of the Trinity as I step into the new. Do not see this as small. Numbers speak prophetically throughout Scripture. 40 meant testing. 12 meant order. Sev meant completion. 3 has always signified divine fullness. And the triple repetition amplifies its authority. When you write 333, you are sealing your silence under heaven's perfect witness. So, let your silence speak. Let it be the final punctuation at the end of September. And let your number, your 333, be the seal that heaven and earth recognize as your agreement with God's timing. When October dawns, you will not just enter a new month. You will enter a marked season, sealed by silence, witnessed by heaven, and carried forward by prophetic obedience. Understand this. Silence is not an absence of power, but a transfer of power. By holding your tongue, you hand authority to God to speak on your behalf. By refusing to argue, you free the Spirit to fight battles you cannot see. Writing 333 is more than numbers. It is your declaration that the fullness of God surrounds you, covers you, and goes before you. Silence is your surrender, and surrender is your greatest strength. Chosen one, you must understand, you are not alone in this call to silence. Heaven has not asked it of you in isolation. Across the world, scattered in cities, villages, mountains, and deserts, there are others marked just as you are. They, too, will bow their heads and close their lips on the last day of September. You may feel solitary, but you are part of a hidden assembly, a great company of chosen ones, standing together in silence. From the outside, it may look like nothing, just individuals in different places, going about their lives. But in the spirit, it is a mighty gathering. The silence of the chosen echoes like a great choir. No words, only stillness. Yet it shakes the atmosphere. What armies cannot accomplish with shouting, the chosen accomplish with one shared moment of restraint. Consider the watchmen of old, stationed on the walls of cities. They did not chatter endlessly, they stayed alert, scanning the horizon in silence. Their eyes were fixed, their ears trained for the faintest sound of threat or promise. Your silence makes you like those watchmen. On September's final day, you are not distracted by argument or noise. You are on the wall, eyes lifted, listening for heaven's signal. The book of Isaiah, chapter 62, verse 6, declares, I have posted watchmen on your walls. Jerusalem, they will never be silent day or night. You who call on the Lord, give yourselves no rest. No, though the verse speaks of intercession. Notice the paradox. The watchmen are described as never silent. Yet their power comes not from empty words, but from watchful presence. In the same way, your silence is not idleness, it is active, watching. The posture of one who refuses to be lulled into complacency. Imagine a vast battlefield. Across the plain, warriors from different nations stand at attention. They do not shout. They do not boast. They do not taunt. Instead, they wait in solemn silence, each one holding their place. The enemy looks across and trembles, for he realizes that the silence is not weakness, it is unity. The chosen are standing as one, and that oneness terrifies the darkness. There was once a chosen one in a crowded city, each day. The noise of life pressed against her arguments in the marketplace, gossip among neighbors, even disputes in her family. She felt suffocated by sound. But when she entered the silence of September's last day, she realized she was not the only one. As she prayed quietly, she sensed others, unseen, yet real, doing the same. The knowledge gave her strength. She understood that silence had become a chain, linking her to chosen ones across the earth. This is what heaven is building, a network of silent warriors, spread far, yet united. The world may never see them together, but the spirit realm does. The silence of one strengthens the silence of another. The faith of one echoes across oceans to lift the faith of many. Chosen one. When you take your place in silence, know that you are not merely protecting yourself, you are adding your stillness to a global watch. Together, chosen ones are forming a wall no darkness can breach. So stand strong, hold your silence, lift your inner gaze to heaven, for on the last day of September, your silence will join countless others, and together, your stillness will thunder louder than any noise the world can make. Chosen one. Silence has another hidden purpose. It breaks patterns of rebellion. Humanity has always struggled with the temptation to speak against God's timing, to complain when waiting feels too long, or to lash out when injustice seems unbearable. Yet each word of rebellion plants seeds that grow into thorns, choking destiny. The last day of September is a moment designed to cut those patterns, to redeem your tongue through restraint. Think back to Israel in the wilderness. Their greatest failures were not only in disobedient actions, but in careless words. Murmuring, complaining, grumbling again and again. They spoke against the God who had delivered them, and again and again. Those words drew judgment rather than blessing. What might have been a short journey stretched into decades, because rebellion on the tongue echoed rebellion in the heart. Silence becomes the antidote. Where complaint once rose, quietness now reigns. Where gossip once spread, lips now remain sealed. Where anger once boiled over, patience now holds steady. The discipline of silence rewrites the script of rebellion and replaces it with obedience. The Book of Proverbs, chapter 10, verse 19, teaches us, sin is not ended by multiplying words, but the prudent hold their tongues. This verse reveals a simple but powerful truth. Restraint is wisdom. It is not endless words that heal. It is the withholding of words that prevents sin from taking root. Silence becomes the pruning blade that cuts away rebellion before it blooms. Imagine a field overrun with weeds. left unchecked. They spread quickly, stealing the soil's strength and suffocating new growth. But when the farmer clears the weeds, the ground is prepared for harvest. Your silence is that clearing. Each time you choose restraint, you uproot a weed of rebellion, making space for the seeds of blessing to flourish. There was once a chosen one who struggled with anger. Every slight, every insult, every misunderstanding triggered words he could not take back. Relationships broke, opportunities closed, and his heart grew heavy. But when he encountered the call to silence, he obeyed, if only for a day. That day became a turning point. He discovered the strength to pause, the courage to withhold, the grace to remain still. Over time, silence broke the chain of his anger, and peace became his portion. This is what the last day of September offers, a chance to end cycles that have held you captive. Words that once pulled you backward will no longer control you. Silence will sever rebellion's grip and open the way for transformation. Picture a river running wild, flooding fields and destroying crops. The water has power, but without boundaries, it becomes destructive. Silence is the riverbank, shaping and directing the flow. It does not remove the water, it harnesses it for life. So it is with your tongue. Without silence, your words can destroy. With silence, they are guided toward blessing. Chosen one. Know this, your silence is not wasted. It is redemption in action. Every quiet moment is God reclaiming your voice, reshaping it to carry life instead of death, blessing instead of curse. So, when the final day of September arrives, let your silence break the cycle. Let it cleanse the soil of your destiny. And when your voice returns, it will no longer echo rebellion, but will release the sound of obedience, faith, and hope. Chosen one. Silence is not weakness, it is the crown of restraint. On the final day of September, your silence will not go unnoticed. Heaven sees the weight you carry, the fire you resist, the words you swallow. Each act of restraint is a jewel placed in your crown. Each moment of quiet strength, another mark of authority being written upon you. Crowns are not given to the careless. They are reserved for those who have endured, those who have proven their faith, not in loud declarations, but in steady obedience. Your silence proves that you can be trusted. It says you will not waste authority on arguments. You will not squander influence on anger. Instead, you will wield your voice with wisdom when the right time comes. The Apostle Paul reminds us in the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 9, verse 25, everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They seek a crown that won't last, but we a crown forever. Your silence is that strict training. Each moment of restraint is another lap around the track, another weight lifted in the gym of the Spirit. You may not see the crown yet, but heaven is fitting it upon your head, even now. Think of silence as a crown wrought in gold. Each jewel represents a moment you could have spoken, but chose not to. Each engraving carries the memory of words you withheld that might have wounded. And when October dawns, you will not only carry silence, you will carry authority. Darkness will recognize it, people will sense it, and heaven will confirm it. There was once a chosen one mocked openly by peers. Their silence was mistaken for weakness. Yet over time, as others burned out in endless arguments. This one rose with quiet authority. People began to turn to them for guidance, not because they had shouted the loudest, but because they had proven themselves trustworthy. Silence had written authority upon their life. And now, chosen one, allow me to speak in pictures to your heart. If these words find resonance in you, let it not stay hidden. Imagine a crown gleaming in heaven's treasury, waiting for the moment to be placed upon your head. When you like this message, it is as if you reach out and polish the crown, saying, "Yes, I am preparing for it." When you share, picture yourself lifting that crown high, letting others see that silence is not shame, but glory. And when you subscribe, it is like stepping into the royal hall, returning again and again to be fitted for your crown, allowing heaven to complete the work. And more, leave your mark here. Write a comment, not out of pressure, but as if etching your name inside the crown itself. It becomes a reminder, a personal engraving that says, "This crown is mine," not by pride, but by obedience. Oh, do not see these actions as demands. They are invitations, small, symbolic gestures, much like silence itself. For silence may look small, but in heaven's eyes it carries eternal weight. So too does every step you take to align yourself with the truth of this message. Chosen one, wear your crown of restraint with honor, for in silence you have shown strength, and in October that strength will shine as authority, setting you apart as one marked by heaven. And remember, crowns are not loud, they gleam quietly, resting with dignity. Your silence today is shaping tomorrow's radiance, a beauty no hand can steal. Walk with this awareness. Heaven is already preparing your coronation. Chosen one, silence is not always soft. Sometimes, silence roars louder than thunder. In the unseen, your stillness is not emptiness. It is a shockwave that ripples through the realms of darkness. Hell expects you to argue, to shout, to waste energy in battles of words. But when you refuse, when you stand in holy quiet, the enemy trembles. For silence announces that you are not fighting on your own. It declares that heaven is fighting for you. Think of Jesus standing before Pilate. The crowd demanded his voice. The ruler pressed him for answers, yet he stood in silence. To men, it seemed like weakness. To the spirit realm, it was a roar. His silence shook the foundations of history. His stillness was not defeat. It was the moment when redemption itself was sealed. The prophet Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 15, already revealed this paradox. In repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. Silence and strength are not opposites. They are twins. One gives birth to the other. Imagine a lion crouched in tall grass. It does not roar immediately. It waits in silence. The earth is still, the prey unaware. But that silence is not weakness, it is power gathering, strength building, the calm before the strike. When the lion finally roars, it shakes the ground. That is what your silence does. It crouches in readiness. It unsettles the enemy. It declares a victory that noise cannot achieve. There was once a chosen one who faced constant provocation, at work, at home, among friends everywhere. People sought to pull them into conflict. For years, They gave in, shouting back, arguing, defending. But one September, they felt the Spirit whisper, "This time, stay silent." They obeyed. Though the enemy stirred louder, their silence stood firm. Weeks later, the very people who had mocked them fell silent themselves. As doors of opportunity opened for the chosen one, their restraint had roared louder than their defense ever could. Picture silence as a drum that cannot be heard with ears but shakes the ground beneath your feet. Every time you withhold a word, the invisible drumbeat strikes. Hell hears it. Heaven hears it. The earth begins to shift. Or think of silence as an earthquake deep underground. On the surface, everything looks calm, but in the depths, plates are moving, forces colliding, pressure building. When the quake finally manifests, landscapes change forever. Your silence works the same. It looks invisible, but beneath, heaven is shifting mountains on your behalf. Chosen one, understand this well. On the last day of September, your silence will roar. It will roar against fear. It will roar against accusation. It will roar against delay. The very powers that thought they had cornered you will realize you are untouchable, because you have chosen stillness. This is why darkness despises your silence. It cannot predict you, cannot provoke you, cannot manipulate you. When you are quiet, you step out of the enemy's reach. Your silence shakes his plans, unravels his schemes, and leaves him powerless. So hold fast. Do not mistake your silence for passivity. It is strategy. It is strength. It is the roar the enemy cannot silence. And when the dawn of October comes, you will rise not only unshaken, but crowned with authority. For your silence will have spoken louder than any voice of opposition. For silence is not emptiness, it is victory unannounced. It is the unseen tremor that topples walls, the hidden roar that darkness cannot withstand. Chosen one, your quiet hour is already shaking the gates of hell and preparing the stage for glory. Chosen one, the silence of September is not the end of the journey. It is the threshold into October. When you withhold your voice on that final day, you are not closing yourself off. You are stepping into a new authority. October is not merely another month on the calendar. It is the season where your silence gives birth to sound, not the noise of argument, but the voice of victory. Silence is like the soil in which seeds rest. For a season, nothing appears. The ground looks barren, the seed hidden. But beneath, life is stirring. Roots spread, stems push upward, and at the appointed time, the green blade pierces the earth. That is what your silence in September accomplishes. It plants the unseen, so that October may reveal the harvest. Think of Noah. He endured long seasons of waiting, surrounded by mocking voices. The silence of his obedience built an ark when no one else believed. But when the flood came, the silence of one man's trust became the salvation of his family. October, for you, will be like stepping onto dry ground after the flood, new, cleansed, and marked by God's protection. The Apostle Paul wrote in his letter to the Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." And your silence is that act of doing good. It may feel heavy, but it is never wasted. October is the proper time, when what was hidden begins to surface. The restraint you practiced will become the authority you walk in. Imagine a soldier returning from battle, not with shouts of rage, but with quiet dignity. Their silence speaks of victory already secured. In the same way, when you cross into October, your silence will carry the fragrance of triumph. Those around you may not understand it, but they will sense it. They will feel the authority you have gained. There was once a chosen one who struggled with impatience. Every delay felt unbearable. Every silence a punishment. But 1 year, they obeyed the call to close September in stillness. When October began, opportunities appeared as if the heavens had unlocked. They realized then that silence was not punishment, it was preparation. October had been waiting, but silence was the key that opened the gate. Picture silence as the final brushstroke on a masterpiece. The painting is not complete without it. The silence of September is that last detail, the stroke that turns preparation into unveiling. And when October arrives, the masterpiece will be revealed, not just what God has done, but what He has shaped within you. Chosen one, do not despise the closing quiet. It is the womb of your October. The silence you carry is birthing a voice of authority, a strength refined by restraint, and a harvest born of patience. So cross the threshold boldly. Leave September's noise behind. Step into October, clothed in silence that has become strength. And as the days unfold, you will discover this truth. The silence of one night has secured the victory of an entire season. For October is not just a turning of pages, it is a crown placed upon your head. The silence you carried is now authority. What was hidden is ready to bloom, and what was delayed is ready to arrive. Chosen one, we have walked through the silence together. 17 sections, each one a torch, guiding you to the edge of September and the dawn of October. You now understand why heaven has marked you, why silence matters, and how restraint becomes authority. But before we close, let me remind you of this. What you do with what you have heard shapes the season ahead. Silence is your shield, your preparation, your roar, your crown. But it is not only for you. It is a testimony meant to shine, a flame meant to be lifted so that others may find their path. Think of it as carrying a lantern through a dark night. You see clearly, but those stumbling behind you are still in shadow. If you lift the lantern, even slightly, their steps become steadier. That is what happens when you choose to engage beyond yourself. When you like this message, it is as though you are polishing the lantern, making its glow brighter. When you share, you are lifting it higher, allowing others who are wandering to glimpse the way. When you leave a comment, it is like carving your name on the handle of that lantern, saying, I was here, I chose silence, I chose obedience. And when you subscribe, you are returning to the fire itself, ensuring your lantern never runs out of oil. Do not see these as commands, they are invitations. Just as silence on September's last day is your choice, so too are these gestures. Each is a voluntary act of beauty, a way of aligning your light with others across the earth. So let your silence shield you. Boot, let your light shine. Heaven remembers every act, every choice, every whisper of obedience, and October will carry the proof of what you chose in September.